The champagne soaked into my designer dress as I hit the marble floor of the Anderson mansion. Richard Anderson, my father-in-law, towered over me, his face red with rage and expensive scotch. Behind him, dozens of New York's elite pretended not to stare while hanging on to every word of the unfolding drama. "You think we don't know what you're doing?" he snarled, pointing an accusing finger. "Using my son to climb the social ladder? Gold digging your way into our family?" I could see James, my husband of 2 years, frozen in place near the grand staircase. His face was a mask of conflict, torn between defending me and standing up to his father, the man who controlled every aspect of his life through the family's wealth. "Dad, please," James started. "Shut up," Richard snapped at him. "This little nobody from nowhere fooled you, but she doesn't fool me. I've had her investigated." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Patterson, the biggest gossip on the Upper East Side, was practically salivating. I could already imagine how this story would spread through their social circles by morning. I slowly got to my feet, dignity intact, despite my ruined $12,000 Valentino. "Mr. Anderson, you're making a scene." "A scene?" He laughed bitterly. "You want a scene? How about I tell everyone here how you grew up in a trailer park, how your mother was a waitress, how you changed your name from Mary Beth Jenkins to Marina Bennett to sound more sophisticated." The whispers grew louder. I could feel their judging eyes, their smirks. These people had never accepted me anyway. I was always the outsider who'd somehow snagged the heir to the Anderson fortune. "You don't belong here," Richard continued, emboldened by the audience. "You never did. James will divorce you, and you'll go back to whatever hole you crawled out of." I glanced at James again. He was looking at the floor now, shoulders slumped in defeat. 2 years of marriage, and he still couldn't stand up to his father. I touched my wedding ring, a family heirloom that had never felt right on my finger. "You're right about one thing," I said quietly, slipping off the ring. "I don't belong here." I placed the ring on a nearby table, the soft clink somehow louder than all the whispers. "But you're wrong about everything else." "Get out," Richard roared, grabbing my arm. "Leave my son alone, gold digger." He dragged me toward the door, past the shocked faces of Manhattan's finest. Some looked away in embarrassment, others watched with barely concealed glee. James still hadn't moved from his spot. At the grand entrance, Richard gave me a final push. "Never show your face here again." I stumbled but caught myself. Straightening my spine, I turned to face the crowd one last time. A small smile played on my lips as I met Richard's hateful glare. "Goodbye then," I said softly, my voice carrying in the sudden silence. As the heavy doors slammed behind me, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text. "Execute Plan B. Monday morning." What Richard Anderson didn't know was that while he'd been having me investigated, I'd spent 2 years quietly buying up shares in his hedge fund through various shell companies. His old-school arrogance had blinded him to the changing financial world, to the power of digital currencies and new investment strategies. He had no idea that the little nobody from nowhere had built her own fortune before ever meeting James, or that she'd been watching his company's weaknesses, waiting for the right moment. Walking down the mansion's steps, I heard the party resuming inside. Let them laugh and gossip tonight. Monday morning would change everything. My car was waiting at the bottom of the driveway. As I slid into the back seat, my assistant handed me a tablet displaying real-time market data. "Everything's in place," she said. "We own 51% of Anderson Capital Management." I nodded, watching the mansion disappear in the rearview mirror. "Book the main conference room for Monday, 9 a.m. sharp. Make sure all board members and major investors are present." "Already done." "And James?" I touched the empty spot on my finger where the ring had been. "His choice. But he better decide quickly." The car merged onto Park Avenue, leaving behind the world of old money and older prejudices. I'd played their game, worn their clothes, spoken their language. Now it was time to show them who I really was. Monday morning couldn't come soon enough. Monday morning arrived with the crisp certainty of a New York autumn. I stood before the mirror in my penthouse office, adjusting my black Armani suit. No more soft designer dresses or delicate pearls. Today was about power. The headlines were already circulating through the financial district. "Mystery investor takes control of Anderson Capital." The Wall Street Journal had picked up the story, and Bloomberg terminals across the city were lighting up with speculation. My phone buzzed, a desperate text from James. "What have you done? Dad's going crazy. Please call me." I ignored it, just like I'd ignored his 20 previous messages since Saturday night. The time for explanations was over. Now was the time for action. They're all assembled in the main conference room. my assistant Sarah informed me. Tablet in hand, Richard Anderson arrived 10 minutes ago, demanding to speak to the board chairman. Perfect. I checked my reflection one final time. Is everything else ready? SEC filings confirmed, legal team standing by, and security is in place. Oh, and that special delivery you requested, it just arrived. I smiled, picking up a small velvet box from my desk. Inside was Richard Anderson's precious family ring, the one I'd left on the table Saturday night. Have someone return this to him during the meeting. Timing is everything. The elevator ride to the conference floor was silent. 2 years of careful planning had led to this moment. I'd built my first fortune in tech startups before I ever met James, but the Andersons had been too wrapped up in their old money arrogance to even Google me. They'd assumed I was just another social climber, never bothering to look beneath the surface. Their mistake. The conference room doors opened, and I paused for a moment, taking in the scene. 20 of New York's most powerful financial players sat around the massive table, with Richard Anderson at the far end, his face already turning that familiar shade of purple. What is the meaning of this? He bellowed, standing up. How dare you? Please sit down, Mr. Anderson. I cut him off, my voice carrying across the room. This is still a professional meeting. Professional? You've somehow manipulated your way into controlling shares of my company. And your company? I raised an eyebrow, taking my seat at the head of the table. I think you'll find that ownership has changed. Sarah, please distribute the documents. My assistant moved around the room, placing folders in front of each board member. Richard snatched his copy, flipping through pages with trembling hands. This is impossible, he whispered, then louder. This is fraud. Every transaction is fully documented and SEC compliant, I replied calmly. While you were busy investigating my childhood in Oklahoma, you missed the fact that I founded and sold 3 tech companies before age 30. My net worth was higher than James's when we met. The board members were quickly putting the pieces together, their expressions shifting from confusion to recognition to calculation. These were survivors, after all. They knew which way the wind was blowing. Speaking of James, I continued, he's welcome to keep his position in the company, provided he can actually make decisions without running to Daddy first. As if on cue, the conference room door opened, and James walked in. He looked like he hadn't slept, his usual polished appearance slightly rumpled. Marina, he started. I'm so sorry about Saturday. I should have. Take a seat, James, I interrupted. We can discuss personal matters later. This is business. Richard slammed his hand on the table. This is outrageous. The Anderson family has controlled this fund for 3 generations. You can't just actually. I can and I have. I nodded to Sarah, who stepped forward with the velvet box. Oh, and you can have this back. It never really suited me. The ring landed in front of Richard with a soft thud. The board members watched the exchange like spectators at a tennis match, already adapting to the new power dynamic. Now, I continued, opening my own folder, let's discuss the future of Anderson Capital. First order of business. Rebranding. I'm thinking Bennett Global Investments has a nice ring to it. You can't erase decades of Anderson legacy. Richard's face was now approaching dangerous levels of red. Watch me. I smiled, the same small smile I'd given him on Saturday night. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to tender your resignation now. I hear Goldman is always looking for experienced managers. Entry level, of course. The room fell silent. Even Richard seemed to deflate, the fight draining from him as reality set in. James kept looking between his father and me, still processing the shift in his world. All those in favor of the rebranding, please raise your hands, I said. Hands went up around the table, first tentatively, then with more confidence. Money respects money, after all, regardless of where it comes from. Wonderful. I stood up, smoothing my jacket. Sarah will coordinate with each department head for the transition. Mr. Anderson, security will escort you to clear out your office. As Richard was led out, muttering threats about lawyers, I caught James's eye. He looked lost, stuck between his father's world and mine. Coming, honey? I asked, gathering my papers. We have a lot to discuss. The Anderson era was over. The time of the girl from nowhere had begun. The next few weeks transformed Anderson Capital into something entirely new. The old brass nameplates came down, replaced by sleek digital displays, bearing the Bennett Global logo. Richard's dark mahogany and leather aesthetic gave way to glass, chrome, and state-of-the-art trading terminal. I sat in my new office, formerly Richard's sacred domain, reviewing the latest performance reports. Our aggressive push into cryptocurrency and AI-driven investments had already yielded impressive returns, shocking the old guard who'd relied on traditional strategies for decades. A knock at the door interrupted my analysis. James stood there, looking more like himself again in a perfectly tailored suit. "The Tokyo merger call is in 5 minutes," he said, hovering in the doorway. "And Dad's lawyers sent another proposal." I gestured for him to sit. Since the takeover, James had surprised me by stepping up, finally showing the business acumen that his father's domineering presence had always suppressed. Our personal relationship remained complicated, but professionally he was proving his worth. "Let me guess," I said. "Richard wants to retain voting rights on the board, in exchange for dropping the lawsuits." James nodded, loosening his tie slightly. "He's running out of options. The SEC investigation cleared us completely, and his old contacts are all jumping ship to work with you. I mean us." "There is no us yet, James." I leaned back in my chair. "You still haven't made your choice." The night of the takeover, we'd had a long conversation in this very office. I'd given him 3 options: divorce me and leave the company, stay married and work together as equals, or maintain a professional relationship only. 2 weeks later, he was still deciding. "I know," he sighed. "It's just complicated. Dad's not just angry anymore, he's broken. Mom says he barely leaves his study. The same study where he spent hours digging into my past instead of actually getting to know me." I kept my voice neutral. "The same study where he planned how to humiliate me at that party." James flinched. I should have stood up to him that night. "Yes, you should have." I checked my watch. "Tokyo's waiting. We can discuss your father's proposal later." The merger call went smoothly. Another old money institution, accepting the new reality. As we wrapped up, my assistant Sarah appeared with urgent news. "Richard Anderson is in the lobby," she announced. "He's demanding to see you. Security's standing by." I exchanged looks with James. "Send him up. Let's end this." Minutes later, Richard stormed in, looking considerably less polished than during his reign. His expensive suit was slightly rumpled, his face haggard from sleepless nights. "Satisfied with yourself?" he spat. "You've destroyed everything my family built." "On the contrary," I replied calmly, "I've evolved it. Your fund was losing ground to digital traders. Another 5 years, and you'd have been obsolete. We had tradition, dignity. You had arrogance and blind spots." I pulled up our latest performance charts. "We're up 40% since the takeover. Your investors are thrilled. The only thing damaged here is your ego." Richard turned to James. "Son, you can't let this continue. The Anderson name has held me back long enough." James interrupted, standing straighter. "Marina's right, Dad. We were falling behind. I tried to tell you about blockchain and AI integration, but you never listened. So you're choosing her." Richard's voice cracked. "Over family. I'm choosing the future." James moved to stand beside my desk. "And if you'd bothered to really know Marina, you'd have seen she's exactly what this company needed." I kept my expression neutral, but something warm flickered in my chest. Maybe there was hope for James after all. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, sliding a document across the desk. "You'll retire quietly with a generous pension. The Anderson name will remain on selected legacy funds. In return, you drop all litigation and public attacks. And if I refuse, then I release the audit showing how you've been manipulating fund allocations to favor your golf buddies." I smiled sweetly. "Did you think you were the only one who could run investigations?" Richard's face went through several colors before settling on a sickly gray. Without another word, he snatched the document and stormed out. After he left, James turned to me. "I've made my decision. Oh, I want to stay, both in the company and with you, if you'll have me." I studied him carefully. No more running to Daddy. No more hiding behind family traditions. No more hiding, he promised. "I've seen what real strength looks like these past weeks. I want to be part of it." I stood up, straightening his slightly loosened tie. "Then prove it. The Singapore office needs restructuring. Take charge of it. No input from me or your father. Show me what James Anderson can do when he stands on his own." He caught my hand as I fixed his tie. "What about us? Our marriage? Let's see how Singapore goes first." I stepped back. "Earn your place in this company, and we'll talk about earning your place back in my life." James nodded, understanding the challenge. As he left to prepare for his Singapore mission, I turned to watch the sunset over Manhattan. The girl from nowhere had claimed her throne. But the story wasn't over yet.